Oh, Triglavian, that makes sense. Okay, so we are live. Um, let's see, who wants to do the shout out today? Or not shout out, but the introduction. We haven't had Cyclo in a while. You want to introduce us? Cyclo? I don't even know what that means. All right, so hey, what's up, everybody? This is Kale Decadence. We're joined. We have a packed house. I don't even have the stream set up all the way because I didn't know Cyclo was going to make one of his rare appearances tonight. But here with us tonight, we have the one and the only Merdud underscore Eve. A little dibbity do. Yeah, I'm super excited because I've been heavily invested in Eve Online for the past week doing various things. But with us tonight we have I'm just gonna go in the order of the pictures that I have. Blood Ruin. All right, yeah, man. We may or may not have a Solon Decimus here shortly. We just got finished doing one of our interviews. He was my third CSM candidate interview of the past 3 days, so he may show up. But then next up, we have the big Lanik.
Thanks for joining us tonight. You're bringing us a perspective we were looking for last week, but better late than never.
Hey, do you want to know a funny story real quick? When I had the intro video playing, I had the desktop audio muted, uh,
Ooh.
and I didn't unmute it until right now. Whoopsie doodles.
That's awkward.
It's
We
it,
have
it
premonition.
would it would be awkward if that was the first time that we've ever done that, and it is not. That's our
Definitely not.
no, even like episode number one, we've been doing that stuff. Oh shit, I'll start over again. Yeah, myself. Hello, I am Kel Decadence Mind Clash Podcast. We have the Murdead underscore Eve, who's shaking his head in frustration, but you know who he is. And then we have Blood Ruin.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
Yep, and like I said, but people heard me, but not you weirdos. Sullen Decimus will show up here eventually. He was my latest interviewee of the CSM candidate interview series that I've been working along. And then we have a big Lanik.
Hey, good evening. Thanks for having me. Long time
Good
lurker,
evening.
first time caller.
Oh, baby. Thank you, Skull Crusher and Cyclo, for the hostings. That is fantastic. Next up, you know your name. I don't know how to say that. Bertrand
Beatron?
Beatron. Yeah, I guess
Well,
so.
and nobody can ever read that correctly. But yeah, what's up? I'm Beatron. Thanks for having me on. Happy to be here and talk about the RNG modules.
I wanted to say that out of my mouth, but I just couldn't. I just couldn't bring myself to saying it.
It's all
Say
right.
key $sign ha.
Ah. And then to wrap up the panel, we have Razor Blades 92, who is another CSM candidate. Hopefully, I can get you on the little ballot talks here soon.
Yeah, hello, hello. Let's go with Razor. Way
Razor.
easier.
I like Razor. All right, so hey, yeah, welcome to the show, guys. We're gonna be talking about some interesting stuff. There's been a lot that has happened over the past week, really, over the past couple days. First, to start off with, let's get ourselves straight up with some newsies. Who is doing newsies?
Yeah, so first thing we covered it shortly last week, but CCB Seagull stepped down as executive producer. She is moving to Sweden to be closer to her extended family. And it came out this week that she's joining Unity, which is a tools development company.
Yeah, that's gonna be a big thing, man. Unity is has their little hands in everything nowadays, as far as game engines, and they're not just the engine people anymore. They do everything.
Yeah, they were
Well, they're
going
getting
into
a good developer.
Bro, that's
yeah,
that's a fact.
they're going into it on Talking to Stations. Those guys are Ashrothi and Carneros are both game dev guys, and they were saying that CCP Seagull's like best quality was project management and keeping people focused and on task, and she helped push timelines at CCP, so she's going to fit in well at Unity.
Does that mean Eve is gonna switch back to one update per year schedule?
No, Eve
Well,
is
I mean,
dying.
they've already slowed down a lot. Before she was on maternity leave, we had the update every 6 weeks, and then it like rolled back, but it was still far more consistent. And
Yeah.
even since then, I think now we're on like roughly a 3 month cycle time, kind of. We've been
Yeah.
lately, so
I hope they keep that up. I've really been enjoying the quick updates.
Especially around balance and small changes, quality of life stuff.
Yeah.
yeah, I think the game has gotten to a point. It's so big that when you introduce any new thing, it really does affect the balance cascading across all things, and you really have to kind of be more cognizant of that. And those quicker pacing on updates and things really help with balance overall. So it would be good to see that continue.
Yeah, so not only do we have Seagull leave us last week, but Puncturus over this weekend. I think it was just yesterday, as a matter of fact, that she likewise is leaving the company. From what I understand, I didn't read this somewhere, but someone had said that it's based on she's trying to pursue a political career. Is that correct?
I heard something about her running for city council, but I'm not 100% on that.
Okay, neat. That's pretty neato. Go
I
from
would quit your
game
job
developer.
after you get that city council job, but
Yeah, right.
I could see it going the other way. I would expect that trying to get enough votes in an election would take a fair amount of effort.
fair enough, fair enough.
Yeah, but not only that this weekend, but there was several DDoS attacks on the server, and that's a distributed denial of service attacks. I'm kind of shocked to know that there was people who play EVE Online, as I found out on Reddit, who had no idea what a DDoS attack was. I would have thought that'd be the nerd catchphrase or the buzzword that we should all know, right?
I thought that was par for the course. Isn't that like in the Russian handbook they give you
Yeah,
when you join
yeah.
Red Alert?
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, so a couple times. I thought it was 3 over the past week, but it may have just been the 2 over the weekend.
I think it has been more. I think at
Has
least
it?
4 times.
Okay, yeah. So that's definitely not a good thing. Not good for us as the players. Not good for anybody when we can't log in and play the game that we love playing.
Yeah, and I wonder who's motivated to do it, because I'm actually an IT guy, and it costs money to like run a DDoS attack. I mean, because hackers can sell that bot time to do it. So I'd be very curious to see who would actually want the DDoS Eve.
Well, here is some of the theories. It was actually asked on Reddit. Was it that someone was protesting about the changes coming up? Was it GOTG / the goons trying to manipulate the war they are in, or just some guy swinging his e-peen about ruining everyone's fun? Did you actually take responsibility for it? And if so, give a reason for the attack. So who knows?
I would think that if it was somebody who's trying to swing their EP, they would have made a Twitter post or something, but we haven't seen anything like that.
I wouldn't.
I
I
mean,
wouldn't
there's
be that guy.
I mean, it's also technically it's illegal, so it's
Yeah,
probably
but
don't
groups like
want to
that, they
take
do that
credit.
all the time.
I know,
They'll
well,
bring
but
down
like,
service for a long period of time and then take credit for it.
Yeah, and based on the posts I saw on the update CCP gave, it looks like it took roughly an hour to divert each attack. I feel like that's not too bad as an IT guy. And I assume these guys are dealing with some like legacy internet stuff with Tranquility. I'm sure it's not using like Cloudflare or other DDoS prevention services. So I'm sure it's harder for them to protect overall.
Yeah, it was not too bad. I happened to be flying a Dread, trying to silo it out of nullsec. It was pretty exciting.
I was lucky enough it didn't interfere with any of my playtime. I just saw the Reddit posts about it, but never had a
Yeah,
problem.
I had no clue what was happening until I read the news, the Eve news. But hey, we have a live event coming up next week. Hopefully, none of that DDoS attack interrupts that. Starting on Wednesday, curiously enough, I don't know why that is. If anybody follows, EVE Online as closely as we do, we know most updates and patches and live events start typically on a Tuesday, but this one, the Operation Conscious Interruption, which maybe you play on that, I don't know, but that starts on Wednesday the 2nd, and that will run to the 15th. But this is going to help celebrate and help ring in the 15 years of the Capsuleers in New Eden. One of the culminating events is on the 7th. We're going to be that is the day. That is Capsuleer Day, is it not?
Yeah, I think so.
Are we taking the day off for that? Is that a national holiday? Is that recognized?
Pretty sure it is.
International holiday.
I mean, the stock exchange is open, but you know.
Oh, we should celebrate that because that's actually next Monday. Thank you, Saragossa, for subscribing. Awesome, man.
Yeah, it's nice. The 15 years of Eve, ending the event on the 15th. Maybe that's what they were going for.
I mean, like any excuse to call in sick on a Monday is a good excuse. So,
I mean, it's not as egregious as Star Wars releasing their new movie not on May 4th, but on May 25th.
How
May 4th
rude.
is a Friday.
they really missed an opportunity there.
Just huge swing and a miss.
Absolutely. But yeah, so this is going to coincide with the 15th anniversary. We're going to have some SOCT, Society of Conscious Thought ships. Our battleship, the Praxis, is coming out. We're going to see that for anybody who's logged in as an Omega within the past, few days prior to that. You're going to be able to get your Praxis.
Yeah, that thing's going to be pretty cool. I'm excited about that ship.
It will be pretty dope. So what are we going to be looking at, Mirdad, in these new event sites?
Well, I just want to give some details on the Praxis. If you didn't know, it's in the same line as the Gnosis and the Synesis. This is the battleship version. It's got a bonus to everything. All gun types, drone hit points, damage, and to combat and core probes. It's got an 888 layout. And the model is quite large. So get your smart bombs ready.
I think it's gonna be I think it's just gonna be a straight beast. I think the Synesis was probably the worst ship in that line, and this will be hands down the best. The Gnosis was kind of underwhelming, but I think just because of its widespread use and availability, that you saw a lot of really bad fits for it. But you've seen quite a few people come up with some really really strong ships. The combination of damage bonuses to everything plus drone damage bonuses lead you to just ridiculously high DPS that you wouldn't expect out of it. So I think shield fits on that new battleship are nuts.
Well, I think the Gnosis has always been very like high utility, but master of none kind of thing, and we're probably going to see the same thing. But the battleship just being a bigger platform is really cool. I also think it'll be fun because they're all alpha friendly, right? So, so that's cool. Like I think they're really good for that exposure to be able to. Essentially, it's kind of like a pirate battleship or a pirate battle cruiser, right? So faction, if you will.
Some more interest for new players, maybe to step outside of the standard T1 stuff and subscribe.
Yeah, and you can fit them any way, and they're always beneficial. Obviously, that, like you said, that leads to a lot of really bad fits, but it's led to some really cool stuff, like Lucy Liu doing some crystalled out shield gnosis recently. I saw it was pretty dope.
Yeah, those things are strong. Or I think the really bad fits are one thing, but there's been a couple streamers. I know Zarvox did it, and Bjorn B did it. But the everything Gnosis, they fit like one blaster, one torpedo launcher, one autocannon, one of every weapon type, and they shield tank it, armor tank it, and give it a whole tank.
But that's just the meme, dude.
Yeah, it is a meme, but it's like it's surprisingly effective. Like you think it would just go down, ball of fire, but Zarvox took down a couple ships with his before it died. It was pretty cool.
Sorry, I misread. It's a 777 layout. But the crazy thing about it is, it only requires Spaceship Command 1.
Oh, of course.
It's the only
Same with all the ships in that line.
That's fucking messed.
Yeah.
I just want to be weird and scan wormhole chains with them.
Freaking alpha bumping Praxis. Beware.
I hope at the next Fan Fest they do a themed event with it again. I remember at the not last one before that I went to, and there was a Gnosis 2v2 tournament. That was really interesting. It was like a speed fitting. You have to just sit down. You have a hangar full of mods, come up with a fit within, I think it was, you had like 2 minutes to make a fit, and then go into 2v2 combat. It was pretty cool to see all the stuff people came up with on the Gnosis.
For this FanFest, I think Zarvox actually did a 1v1 version of that, and
Oh,
that
yeah?
was really fun to watch.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
It was like him and I can't remember who else it was, but yeah, they had just a few minutes to fit up a ship and go at it. It was pretty funny. They had an almost identical fit, and it's down to tooth and nail. All right, so yeah, so about this event that's going to start on Wednesday, they're going to have a variety of play types intended for all levels of Capsuleers by defending the SOCT facilities from the attacking drifters, the big, bad, ugly, next to the Triclavians, of course. And it's going to be, you're going to be getting some skins that are going to drop during that. And you can find all of this fun shenanigans inside your agency in the Neocom menu. So if you're unfamiliar with that, you probably haven't been doing any live events lately, because that's where they all will be. To include the mythical space one that happened a few weeks ago that I forgot happened, and I don't know if anybody else realized it happened.
I got both my boosters from both my characters. They are both currently plus 12 for the 6 days of that duration.
Oh, that totally flew over my head.
Exactly. If Murdred, if you hadn't put that in the notes, I would have completely forgot about that. And I think EVE Online, CCP forgot about that, because there's almost no way to find that on their website. I had to do some deep web crawling to learn some information about that, but we can talk about that later. Let's talk about this 15-year event. So like I said, on May 7th, they'll be placing in your redeeming system for every account that's active in the 30 days prior to the 15th anniversary, and you're going to get the skins, which is going to be a limited edition 15th anniversary branded shirt and cap. So if you're into those that cool swag you can wear on your body that you can't really see because you can't walk in stations, you can get some of that.
For sure. Love me some live events.
I do like the live events. All right. Let's see. Before we get into our sort of player news and battle reports, I just want to remind everyone that this lovely podcast is brought to you by none other than the War Deck Project, which is a open Discord group, and they have a focus on discussing and talking about the War Deck situation in hopes of trying to propose a better War Deck mechanic and a system using open communication dialogue with CSM and CCP. That's been quite a hot topic. Every time I talk to somebody who's running for CSM, they all kind of mention, you know, that mechanic is kind of broken a little bit and needs to change. So if you agree, you might want to go talk to those guys.
I have zero interaction with the War Deck system.
Yep.
I hope those guys get what they want, but it doesn't affect them in the slightest.
I got war decked once.
Me too.
It's really funny when they war deck wormhole people. Like, we don't live in Isaac.
Yeah, not gonna get anything. I remember, I think last time I was war decked, I was in Rogue Capel, Cyclos Alliance, and we ended up sending my paladin into Jita and killed them. The support fleet waiting in perimeter. It was just weird.
Yeah, they don't like it when you fight back.
Yeah, they kind of seem to not know what's going on. But regardless, a better, more engaging system would hopefully change that. More engaging.
Really, something to fight over would be good. There's no resource limitation for anything in high sec or null sec right now, and you just kind of see the same stagnation in both areas.
Yeah, in high sec, it seems like that war deck system has been there a lot longer. That stagnation's been there for almost ever, and people, it's just paying to farm guys that don't know what's going on.
You know what you shouldn't be fighting over? You shouldn't be fighting over the Sinos that were all lit this weekend for the late great John Bellicose. It completely breezed by me that it was John Bellicose Day, because it didn't seem like too long ago that we had a John Bellicose Day. So maybe just time is flying that much. If you guys aren't familiar with that. Yeah, John Bellicose was one Eve player we lost a few years back. So Mom Bellicose and now Sis Bellicose are online and playing to help keep the memory alive of their son and brother. So yeah, if you still have a Sino left to light, feel free to light that for him. What else?
Kelly, you've been busy with our first round of interviews for the CSM.
Yeah, so I tried. I wanted to do like a group setting where we can kind of get people of similar tickets or parties to come on and talk together, but I think the timing of it didn't work out, and there's still a little bit up in the air as not whether or not, but when exactly CCP is going to open the voting season. But we know who the candidates are, so I spent all last week reaching out to every single one of them that I could actually find some sort of social media profile. I'm not gonna say I'm a stickler, but if you didn't have either a Twitter, um, or you weren't on Reddit somehow, or if you didn't already have a Discord username set up and I couldn't contact you via one of those methods, I'm not gonna go hunt you down. I think that's kind of one of those important things. You got to have a social presence in the EVE Online meta. But anyways, yeah, I sat down, was in area on Saturday, moderator yesterday, and just right before this show aired, I had talked to Solon Decimus. So we've got 3 candidates. I'll have Solon's interview up by tomorrow mañana.
Yeah, we don't have a firm date on when we'll be voting, but it'll be sometime between late April, which is, ending, or somewhere in May.
It's a long time. But yeah, and then another little bits of news that dropped yesterday was Sort Dragon, the leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy, had a little State of the Alliance address. I'll link that in the show. I'm not going to go over it too much. Did anybody else read it besides me? I kind of glanced over it. Didn't seem anything out of the ordinary. It wasn't propaganda. He just kind of stated some of the obvious things and how they're going to go forward, trying to handle the Goon Swarm invasion. And the last thing he kind of touched on was apparently at some point during FanFest, some Alliance members or somebody within his coalition had approached him and asked him what their thoughts were on some of their LGQBT,
LGBTQ.
all those little different letters that mean you are of a different persuasion. He asked, what do you feel about that? Do they, should they be concerned about outing themselves within the alliance? And his response was absolutely not. They don't have no reason why they should out themselves, and he doesn't care. I mean, I'm in the same boat. I do not care what you do while you're outside of the game, as long as you are kicking ass and pressing F1.
Yeah, maybe Lanik has some insights into what Sword said and how it's feeling out among the line members of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, I have to admit, I actually haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but I did read the INN version, which for a guy like me, I guess is kind of like CNN. Take it with a grain of salt. But I don't know Sword Dragon personally. I've never actually really talked to him. I'm just kind of an average line member. But I like the guy from what I have talked to him in TeamSpeak when we're on fleets and whatnot. And you know, I feel like we're up against a big force. It's tough, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun being in Guardians of the Galaxy. I have to say.
Well, the spin out of the Goons is that you guys are being told not to undock and not to fight, not to defend your space. And some of the soda was a admission that Guardian of the Galaxy is going to yield Fade and Pure Blind. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's some blue balling on both sides. Um, I think Asher and crew have done a little bit of it at certain times. Guardians of the Galaxy do that sometimes. I want to think it's for strategy. Um, I'm not privy to a lot of that stuff. I don't have any real OPSEC stuff that I'm not a director by any means, but you know, there are some nights where the goons will be dropping another structure in DO6, and it's like, hey, why aren't we dropping? Why aren't we fighting back? And it's just like, no, just not tonight. So me and my guys, we'll go out and poke at them and just kind of have fun and kind of just annoy them while they do it. But yeah, I personally don't have the ability to call big drops on those guys when I'd like to.
Yeah, for sure. It seemed like from talking to stations this weekend that even Bastion and Lawn have tasted the blood in the water, and they're also deploying up to get in on the fight. So just more little thorns in your side.
I don't, from someone who was in the Guardians Galaxy and Slice Alliance, I don't think any of that's going to spell the end of the greater coalition of all the Guardians, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be tooth and nail. It's going to be very tough, and I think that Guardians have a lot of capable members. I think once they actually start seeing that this is not just a soft invasion like we were talking about last week, that super sexy soft invasion. They're eventually going to start hitting them hard, and GOTG is going to have to really fight back to hold their space if they want it. I think they do.
I would just recommend, as someone who's been evicted from the North, that if you're in Guardians of the Galaxy and you aren't 100% sure what's going on, that you just quietly move some of your expensive assets to LowSec or to NPC null. Just for safekeeping.
Just in case.
You don't need to do that now because asset safety, bro. Just throw him in a Citadel, and even if it dies, you still get it all back.
Wow, that tax though.
It's very small. It's not that bad.
It's like 10% or something, right?
Yeah, it's not too bad at all. I've had a few asset safeties full of goodies.
Aren't those the 27 longest days of your life?
Yeah. Oh, which, by the way, hey guys, good news. I finally got my Thanatos back after the March patch incident where I had no idea that local was borked, and I went out there and I was doing some carrier ratting. I finally got that back. It's only been 5 weeks, but yay.
So, what we learned today is you don't know how to descan.
This is a hard fact.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, sadly, I couldn't get in on any of that fun when local went down.
So it was beautiful.
I went around. Sorry to anyone this might offend, but I went around Slice Space and I was killing a lot of ratters, and I didn't know that local was bored. So I was like, someone told me they were like, oh yeah, no, local's bored. You're not showing up, and I was like, yes. So I just kept going at it, just kept going. I did this for like 4 days. And then I was like, hey, okay, is local still bugged? Because I'm still getting all these kills. And they were like, oh, no, they fixed that like 2 days ago. so I ended up finding out that slice ratters are just very lazy. But then
true.
From talking with some of them, as long as you have a Sino on your ratting ship, it's apparently reimbursed. It's SRP'd 100%. So that was kind of interesting to find out. And that's why I like to hunt in Slice Space. It's a good time. For everyone. For me, for them, they still make money. It's great.
That's
funny. Yeah, we do. We fit Sinos to our Vexers, and if you grab somebody, light that Sino and give us a nice drop. Absolutely.
SRP'd ratting ships?
Yeah.
Ratting carriers.
Nullsec 2018, my man.
It's that new.
Gotta keep those ADMs up.
Yeah. gonna hold back my comments.
Yeah. There was one time where I killed a ratting VNI. He did light a Sino, but the supers weren't in range, and he admitted it in local. I was like, all right, cool. He wanted to fight me, so he got in a Vexer, and he said this will be a good 1v1. And I said no one would ever take a Vexer versus a Stratios and assume that they are at a fair advantage unless they're extremely competent pilot. So I assumed there was a Sino. It was a good time. I kind of like kited him out. A Saber came in, tried to bubble me. I killed the Saber, and then 2 Aeons dropped. And I was like, there it is. I knew it was coming this whole time. You nearly fooled me. It was good times, and then there was like 10 minutes of just local banter that was really entertaining. They're good guys. Like,
trust the Null Bear, man. The Null Bear 1v1 me is always to be kept at least 24-kilometer distance.
The thing I like about Slice is when you go in and you're messing around, like they're friendly about it. Like it's like I'm gonna kill you kind of thing, but it's in a friendly manner. There's other areas of space like fraternity space or like goons. they drop everything in the world, and then they like shit talking local. They spam stuff, and they're like, "Get out of our space!" And it's like, I don't, whatever.
That's what's fun for them, man.
Yeah,
I don't.
because you're not playing a game at that point. You're threatening their way of life, blood.
Oh yeah, serious internet spaceships.
I just
Yeah.
avoid goon space. You get really tired of having 3 supers dropped on your solo cruiser.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how it is in Delve. Like they will bring out everything against even just a little fleet poking around. And
Oh.
I think you're right about Slice Base too. Like we won't do that to you. Like we want fun. Like I want that small gang fight if that's what we're doing that night. Like yeah, it's not quite like Delve.
Rote has been roaming around in Delve with retribution gangs, and that's actually been pretty successful. You can you still get like I've had Titans try and bows on me, supers dropped, carriers are all over the place, but generally you can move pretty quick and just get new targets and get subcaps to follow you and farm those. You just
Yeah,
gotta
something
stay on
like
the
that.
move.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Something like that's
retributions
definitely
are the
fun.
new claw fleet now, like slash, or the Orthrus. Like it's the retribution is one of those two things now. It's the new claw or the new Orthrus. You're not sure which, but very
The Orthrus
effective
is just a
regardless.
worse retribution at the end of the day, let's be honest here.
Pretty much.
Retribution fleets are pretty clutch when you're roaming around in other people's space. Their mobility and survivability, like a single carrier, is almost zero threat to a single retribution. But also, I don't know. It's definitely a strong ass ship, but the counter is not hard. Like
No.
if how many times are you on grid in your retribution with multiple carriers? One of the carrier launches some dromies and a siren, and the other one launches damage. Your retribution's dead.
Can
So
confirm.
yeah, there's a huge tendency in the EVE community to not actually think about how to engage a target and just throw the same old stuff at it.
Well,
Doesn't
the other
work,
thing
you call
is,
it broken.
the only reason you're flying retributions all the time and not like cruisers is because you know for a fact, no matter where you go in nullsec, there will be carriers on grid. Like
100%.
that's the other thing that's a bummer.
That's why I
Like,
do retribution so much.
yeah,
It's just
yeah.
not worth it to roam in anything else anymore.
No, it's like
Hear you.
retributions are 100 min Lokis.
Yeah. Well, the name of the game is if you can't tank a carrier, you don't have much business roaming to nullsec space.
No, yeah.
Because you're gonna run into one. I remember just a couple days ago, we ran into a gang that was like it was mostly made up of cruisers. They had a couple battle cruisers. They were like twice our size. And they scattered. We showed up. And we're like, oh, what the hell? And they start coming back on grid. We're like, oh, we know what's coming. Sino went up. 2 carriers come in. We tackle the carriers, start fighting them. Triage comes in. Supers come in. Just the same old stuff. But it would have been a fun fight. Our cruiser gang versus their cruiser carriers. Carriers made it interesting, but the triage shut everything. I'm excited for the new Triglavian ships, and in terms of their ability, just crazy DPS, their ability to deal with caps.
Same. I think I'm excited about them for different reasons than you are, but
Yeah.
I think they're going to be really cool and they're going to shake up the meta. So
They are definitely going to do that, and that's part of our topic for this evening. But before we kind of get into that, I just want to really quick mention that we had a pretty lengthy discussion today on Twitter. I was talking with Cardinal Sin, and I think Rowanan jumped in there, Ashtarothi, and a few other guys talking about PI. So given that we do have some PI changes happening in the near future, I would actually like to see if I can set up a PI roundtable and kind of discuss what we think maybe needs to be looked at as far as PI goes. I like doing PI. I think it's very relaxing. It's one of those things I can do. I wake up early. I'm a morning guy. I like to wake up in the morning. I hit up my PI for about 10-15 minutes, log off, go to work. And I can, set up different characters doing that every other day. So I think some changes need to be made, and I would like for your input. So if you would like to sit in on this PI roundtable, just hit me up on Twitter or in the Discord. Just let me know. Before we go on to the night's topic, we have Lanik here. He's like we know, he's in the Guardians of the Galaxy. He's within Slice and specifically the Black Crow Bandits, and we kind of want to get a frontline man on the battlefield's perspective of what's going on with the war in the North.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, so the North is it's nuts up there. It's fun. But last week, I know you guys had on King Voodoo to talk about the flipping of the Fortizar. And I was one of the guys affected. I had all of my assets in that Fortizar. I live in VFK. That's our home, and it was a sad situation because I fly with those guys every night. Um, I personally get along with pretty much everybody in the corp. I don't have any problems with anybody, and I liked King Voodoo. He's a very experienced player. He's been in the Alliance tournament. You know, taught me a lot. I liked flying with him because I'm more of a younger player. I'm only 2 years, so most of you guys may even call me a new bro. Um, so it was good flying with him. But that being said, um, really a sad situation. A lot of good guys got screwed over. I am friends with the dudes in the corp, and it came down to just some egos. And sometimes not everybody's nice, and you get a couple of dicks in chat, and shit goes down. That's kind of what happened here. There really wasn't any goon spin. There was no infiltration, nothing like that. It really was just an internal issue that kind of escalated. And I personally didn't lose any assets, but I know some guys who did. The corp wallet was basically drained. Like it was a shit show. But that being said, it's like super exciting. Like it just makes the game so much fun to have that kind of drama. I'm getting texted and woken up on a Saturday morning to, oh my god, the Forza and VFK is flipped. Like you got to log on, man. We're things are crazy. Like it's part of the excitement as well. So it's that recently was crazy. Other than that, now for as far as what's going on with like Slice in the North, I don't really represent Darkness. I don't know anybody really in there too much, but I think GOTG as a whole and Slice, I don't think they're going to fail Cascade. I think there's a lot of great guys online with a lot of good skills. We all have a lot. Some of us have a lot of ISK. I consider myself even like a casual player. I've got a wife and kids and a job, and I don't get to play every night. So when I need some ISK, you know what? Maybe I will buy a little Plex and I'll get some ships. So from that perspective, I don't think they're just gonna make us go away. Like that's not gonna happen. Especially the Black Crows. Like we love to PvP. That's our primary thing. Like I don't really care too much about ratting and going out. Like I want to go out and fight and have fun and fly around with my friends. So I feel like there's a lot of other guys in Slice like that as well. So I think we bring some good fights as best we can. Now, overall, the goons may have us outnumbered, absolutely. And I think what's happening in the north right now is Asher Elias and his SIG, special interest group. He's got his group of guys who love to fight a lot. They're kind of the first wave. Those guys are in DO6 right now, dropping structures almost every other night. We're out there trying to blow them up every other night, and it's a blast, honestly. Like, people are pissed off they can't rat or they can't bring their Oracle out, but if you're into PvP, like, this is one of the best times to be a player in the North, for sure.
And Asher loves fighting Darkness.
This is a fact. He does.
Yeah, and he's good about it. He talks in local with us. We bullshit a little. Like it's a good time. It's good content. I would say to anybody out there, if you don't like the goons for whatever reason, come to the north and join us because you're gonna have a blast blowing them up.
Okay.
That's a nice attitude to have about it.
So real quick, in the chat we had Cardinal Sin was mentioning that CCP is offering a 3-month for 50% off, which makes it only $19.99 or $19.95 for a 3-month subscription. I went onto my main, did not see this. However, when I logged in on the website to one of my alt characters, up in the right hand corner, I saw a nice little icon that says offers 1. I click on it, and sure enough, I can get a 3-month subscription for $19.95. So I don't know how they're determining who gets that, because all my accounts are currently alpha, so I don't know how they said this one in particular I can upgrade for $19.95, and this is available till 6 May, so you have roughly a week if you want to take advantage of this. So I suggest you do that if you want to upgrade.
Act now and get a free Braxis battleship with
For sure, yeah.
Subscription.
I'm actually going to go check my other accounts and see what that says, but yeah, there you go. Where were we? Yeah, he said don't join goons, right? Is that what he said? Which, by the way, quick update and report. I got news from King Voodoo just this morning. He is now an official member of the Goonswarm Federation.
Couldn't have saw that one coming.
Bazinga. Yeah, he told me that this morning, so good luck and congratulations to him.
I'm sure he'll be shooting me soon.
It's funny, I actually, like a couple nights, I think it was like last Wednesday, him and another FC who actually just recently left, Black Crows, they came up on a roam. There was like 4 or 5 of them late, like 3 in the morning. And I was like one of the only guys on, and they actually showed up again to come check out what they've done, and scrapped them a little bit, and it was fun. So I've still seen those guys roaming around, but there definitely is some bad blood. And it all depends on how you feel about corp theft. That's something else entirely, I guess.
Yeah. So I just checked out all my accounts, and I only have one account that actually has that offer.
I'm trying to fit up a VedMac on CC. I'm struggling.
Okay, so I will read this email. This email that we have from Garrison Hero says, log in as an alpha or upgrade and log in as an omega before 6 May to receive the awesome EVE Online 15th anniversary rewards. As an added bonus, there's a staggering 50% off the 3-month omega package on this account only if you upgrade before 6th of May. The rewards for omega pilots are not to be missed, so make sure you secure that upgrade in time. Interesting.
Was it an account that was an alpha? Because maybe it's just because it's not subbed currently. It has that available. If you have like an account that is subbed, then maybe it's not available.
No, they've all been omega at one point, but I've since recently kind of taken them all down to alpha.
Yeah, I mean, but currently it's not alpha.
Yeah, all mine are alpha.
Or it's not omega.
Are they all on the same email?
Nope.
I'll
have to investigate further. Anywho's it. So yeah, that's enough for the player news, and thank you for the little update on what's going on in the north. Now let's talk about some of that magic. We've got the magic in us this evening. We're gonna be talking about enchantments and random numbers. What's going on here, Merdud? I know you've been experimenting with this a little bit, yeah?
Well, yeah. This week I, like many streamers on Twitch, many YouTubers on YouTube, have dived into the abyss. CC has been populated with the sites as of Tuesday, and you can log on and give it a try. If you're there on a peak period, you may experience the fun of tie-dye in PvE, which is, it's something. But you can run through these 15-minute sites, 10 to 15-minute sites. They are cruiser only. You go in, you take your keys, which are handed out through the redeem system on CC, so you can give these sites a try. 5 different types of sites, all a little bit different bonuses to the ship, different bonuses to your enemies, and different weaknesses to you and your enemies. So you pick your site, go on in, you run these sites. They're a mix of drones or single target drifters. Apparently there's Triglavians in there somewhere. Haven't seen any yet, but you complete 3 rooms. You loot the can, which is at the end of each room. It's a research facility. You must blow up. Fairly simple to blow up. And then a gate opens upon completing the final drone or NPC within the room. Take advantage of the gas clouds that bonus or debuff yourself or your opponents. For example, buffing your signature radius, which would be bad if you were gonna take a lot of damage from a drifter, but good if you're gonna try to shoot a bunch of small drones.
Something that's fairly different about the sites that I've noticed. So they're procedurally generated as well. So there's not a similar pattern, at least for location and structures. Like different area of effect clouds that you can fly through that'll have different effects on your ship. And there's like point defense batteries, target painting batteries, and things that'll spawn. And unlike any other PvE site before them, there is a limited size. So there is actually, I don't know if noticed it when you're running around the sites, but if you fly too far away from the site, a red wall appears. You fly right through the wall, but then your screen starts getting more and more chaotic looking, and you start just taking AOE damage. It's very interesting.
So there's a boundary with these, right?
Yeah. So if you're like, I was running them all with, I was coming up with PvP fits for the ships, and I was just diving into them with those ships, trying to kite the site and mitigate damage by not getting swarmed by all the drones or whatever you're doing in there. Very quickly, you run into the boundary. It makes it a little more interesting, a little more difficult. Almost
Y'all
died
must
quite
be
a few
hating
times.
those sites.
Yeah.
I
think
didn't
they're
find a
chaotic.
problem with the boundaries. When
No, I
was
didn't have
running.
a problem with them at all either. I just thought it was an interesting take on them, because they would be fairly easy to game if you had a fast cruiser and just flew in a straight line and kited them indefinitely in one direction. And now you can't do that.
For sure.
So from what I understand, with these filaments, there's 5 room type or 5 levels, 5 tiers, and then within those 5 tiers you have 5 different types. There's storm and well, I looked on CC a little bit. So there's one that was like a storm, specifically called the storm, a calm storm, something like that.
Yeah, so the calm and the first word modifier that indicates what level it is, like how difficult it is, and then
So calm, agitated, fierce. I don't know what level 4 is, but level 5 is chaotic.
Yeah.
And then there's the dark, electrical, exotic, firestorm, and gamma.
Yeah, so you have definitely a lot of different options, and as you go up those tiers, you're definitely gonna get some higher levels. What's the highest level you guys have taken on so far?
I've only done a level. I actually somehow managed to deplete all of my filaments. The original set, and I ran them until I was out. I went into sites and didn't get another filament out of the site on my last one.
How long ago did you run that? Because I think Rise said in his interview with Ashtarothi just a couple days ago that he tweaked the loot table so it would, for testing purposes, would drop a lot more filaments now.
It was a couple days ago.
Okay.
I noted that change that Rise made. There was a lot more 4s, 5s, 3s in even the level 1 sites.
Yeah, they like popped it up to like 6 just so people would be able to test as much as possible. He said it's not indicative of what they want to do. From that, if you haven't listened to that interview, it's really good. Like just to kind of hear what CCP Rises, a lot of the thought process that's going on behind the scenes. But he said eventually, like they're still kind of working out where they want it to be, but they want it to be somewhat sustainable for the person. Like one of the things they were talking about was the level that people want to run at, right? So if you are comfortable running level 3s and that's like what you have time for, and that's, maybe you don't really aren't wanting to pursue those tier 5 opportunities or whatever, then by running a 3, you should be able to get an additional filament for a 3 again by the end of the site, to sustain that same thing. But then as far as like what they're trying to figure out is like how's that going to play with just essentially like farmability? Is that a potential thing that is going to cause an issue? And how do they want to structure advancement, right? So is that something where like occasionally there's a rare chance for a next level, like a tier 4 filament to spawn, and you could either use it to advance up to tier 4s if that's what you wanted to do, or you could sell those, right? And so they're still tweaking numbers and playing with that, but the idea that he was kind of expressing in that interview was very much the idea that if someone wants to persistently run level 2s, then they should be provided that opportunity just through the course of their action, and this become their hobby or their activity that they pursue without being forced to go up or without being forced to drop back down. Like if you really want to run tier 4s, you shouldn't be getting all these, you shouldn't have to like constantly drop back to tier 1 and like work your way back up.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that mindset, but that makes sense. I did know that the loot tables were highly inflated.
Yeah,
No
I think
way.
they're gonna tweak it a lot. I think that's one of the things that's gonna be something that they're going to look at metrics, I think, for to try and figure out what they want to do with them. So
Yeah. As always, I'm sure they'll underestimate the tenacity of the average Eve player.
yeah, the average farm ability
Yeah,
factor.
exactly.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed, I'm sure some of you guys noticed as well, and some of you might have participated in this on the r/eve on Reddit. There's a heated debate going along everywhere in regards to the random number generation and some of what you guys are talking about. And you guys have been somewhat vocal, or some of you have been very vocal as to your thoughts on this. Now, from what we understand, you get the mutaplasmids, you go in these abyssal dead spaces, you get these mutaplasmids that you can attach to, let's say, micro warp drives or webs and scrams, and it can give you either really bad changes or can give you some dank changes that would make it almost game breaking and unheard of. So, what are some of these potential downfalls that you're gonna see, and you hope that don't occur?
So I've been experimenting with the mutaplasmids quite heavily. When they first were announced, I was like most of the people on our Eve. It seems I was very concerned that it would break an already uh, an already tumultuous situation in terms of game balance. Like there's a lot of things in the game that are quite easily tipped over the scale, and a lot of people have strong views about what ships are broken or what weapon systems need to be changed at any given moment. So I was very worried. Rise coming out with announcements on adjustments to the numbers on the upper end, toning them down a little bit. I think that was a really good initial step. I think it would be very dangerous for them to open with the numbers far too high if they wanted to buff them in the future. I think that'd be a safer approach. There was just a post on Twitter from Rise about the MWD, one of the potentially most worrisome modules, I think, for the average Eve player. Is that you'll see nano gangers running around with A-type mutagenic or A-type abyssal modded MWDs going infinitely fast with snakes and links and every other thing under the sun. And
Pretty
some of
much
the
bringing back
numbers,
the old Garmers with the off-grid boosts.
yeah, TikTok Toxic posted a very terrifying Garmer fit on our Eve a little while ago, 10k a second free links, and it was worrisome. But after Rise's update that they're lowering it down another 10% on the MWD speed factor, uh, and my experimentation alone with it, I'm not particularly concerned about them. The only mods that are really scary are things warp scramblers, stasis webifiers, and MWDs. And I speak about them as scary from my perspective of a small scale, small gang roaming PvP. I think the effect on game balance for faction warfare is going to be huge. There's all kinds of different variations that are going to come out there. Uh, but in my experience, I haven't had any like god tier modules. I've used a lot of unstable multiplasmids, and I've never gotten a god tier one. I've ruined every Fed Navy web I've put into this, every one of them.
So
I
I mean,
gotta
this
say though,
it has the potential to give you some bad shit.
Yeah, exactly. So some of the painfully bad ones, like your MWD, could end up making you slower, using more capacitor, being harder to fit. And from my experience, at least when going through them and using them, if you get one or two really good rolls, you're paying for it heavily on the other rolls. So the best mod I rolled out of them so far was a medium armor repair, and I got a max roll on cycle time and rep amount. So the thing repped incredibly hard, harder than an A type. But I rolled about 50% of what I could do on cap usage and fitting. So it became very difficult to use. It cycled extremely fast. It used a crap ton of capacitor, and it made it very difficult to actually use in a sustained fight. It was a good module potentially, but it wasn't broken as hell. And I think it all comes out in how they're going to implement the drop tables. Like what how often are you going to see these things? How farmable are they really going to be? How much of an investment is it really going to take to get that fitting reduced slow percent amount and max range roll on your Fed Navy web? Because
that's
one of
also
those
kind of
will be very
balancing
cheap.
around ISK though, right? And balancing around cost doesn't really work because I know people who are just going to go out and buy them from people who have them for exorbitant amounts of ISK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rise kind of talked about that a bit in the interview, and he brought up some interesting points. And like I say that term because while they were good arguments, like for instance, he talked about the idea that Eve players have an expectation of a certain range of values when we engage in a fight. So like, and I'll just like say a situation, you're in low sec faction warfare, you're in a complex and a Fed Navy comet warps in on you, right? Well, if that Fed Navy comet starts burning at you and you look at his speed and you know that it's 1256, then like that I believe it's been a long time, but I believe that's the maximum speed with perfect skills for a T2 afterburner, right? So if it's any faster than that, there's like some things that you can make assumptions off of, like that Comet is overheating, or they're using something that's advancing their total speed, like implants, or they've modified their fit in some way with a speed enhancing item. But like, and he touched on that, saying there's so many variables, like that's not predictable. So uh, players should be used to that, and like that's where the RNG really doesn't. His argument was the RNG there really isn't that big of a deal to think about. Like, um, and he brought up the point, like, you don't know if that ship has a Fed Navy web on it or anything like that, but you have an expectation because of the price that it might not, and different things like that. And like my argument was essentially in that same situation, because it's fixed values, even if it is a Fed Navy web, like it's a fixed value. You know that when that web hits you at 16 kilometers, it's a Fed Navy web, and things like that. Whereas the mutoplasmids, because they have such a range of values, there's this very at a high level, you can't tell the difference, or you can't tell what the range of those things is, and it's going to be very interesting or difficult to differentiate how that's going to play out and what the effects of those systems will be in different engagements. And then you take that to like a scale where it's 10 people in varying ships with varying items and things like that. And you try to balance around money, and it becomes this very, instead of a very consistent scale like we see with Tiericide, it becomes a very amalgamated range of things that it becomes like a much more twitch or like reactionary kind of situation in a lot of fights, which if that's what they're aiming for, okay, great. But I feel like that's kind of why a lot of that um, pushback has happened on Reddit, where people are kind of uncomfortable with the idea of the random generation, is just the fact that it's not consistent. It is very random, and you don't necessarily know how that's going to be affected and played out in a longer term
Right.
and like a higher scale.
I heard Rise's argument on that. However, I have to disagree. I think that in Eve, if you want to do PvP and stuff like that, then you need to be able to make certain assumptions as well. You need to be able to make an assumption of what a rapier's web range is if you're kiting, or Lachesis' scram range. You just kind of need to be able to know these things, and that that makes grids a lot more complicated in a game where the PvP is already really complicated with the things you need to memorize like that.
Yeah. Well, and I'm actually of the like sort of I get what you're saying by you need to assume those things. I actually don't think you need to assume those things, but I like that you get to, because
Yeah.
in Eve there's so many things where like looking at turret models, speeds, sig radiuses, like which that's another talking point. I really want sig radius on the overview. It's not a column. Size column doesn't work, but you can tell a lot about a ship, about another pilot, or about a group of pilots based on a lot of the information that's displayed. And I actually am a firm believer that the more of that we incorporate, the more it drives like high skill play, as well as like really keying into information that's available to you. Like I still think that Cynos should have a icon or like a turret model, things like that. And that's like a broader discussion. But when you take
Right.
that and you distill it down into this RNG, I think that's really a big portion of why people are scared
I
or
think
frustrated.
absolutely that's why people are scared of it. It's taking a well-established range of values and totally mixing them up. And the scary part for most people, I think, is pushing that high end so much further, right? Like when people are crunching the numbers on initial Fed Navy webs, that was the go-to worst case, 140-kilometer web rape or whatever it
Oh
was.
yeah, we were in a couple of channels where people uh in the Kveki's Chosen group were looking at 100 mn GIST X type afterburners with 40% mass reduction and like insane speed bonuses, and what you ended up with just like this insanely powerful Legion fit. And that's kind of that really high end with high grade snakes gets really scary.
It does get very, very scary. And to bring it back to a point you're talking about previously, the fear around balancing anything in the game based on cost. It's been proven time and time again that balancing based on cost is not a viable method. But I think balancing on supply, although very similar, is a noticeable difference. It's not cost. Like it really comes down to how rare these mutagens are really going to be. Like the unstable warp disruptor multiplasmid, for instance. Like that's the best one for the warp disruptor. How often are people actually going to get that? And then multiplied out, how often are they going to get the rolls that they want on it? How often are they going to get good rolls? I'm hoping that they are very, very careful with those numbers, and it will be rare. And I think there's a certain something to be said about the excitement in bringing in these more unique ships. People already have such an allure to AT ships and existing unique ships, but the guys who have those, barring Velsharoon and a couple others, don't
they
take
don't use
them
them.
out.
No.
They don't take them out into space, right? They keep them in one area. They PvP in a very confined, sterile environment where they have most of the control over the situation, and they take care of them. They make sure they don't die. But if you're going to see people roaming out in space with these crazy modules, say some Kveki's Chosen guy does get this god tier Legion with the max rolls on his AB, no mod anything, and the guys realize this. Like you fight that thing once, this character now has this Legion that does that thing. He must have these mods. I like to fantasize about some fucking guys getting hard on for that and trying to chase him down and kill him, and some certain sense of satisfaction in killing this extremely rare modified ship and getting a chance at the drop from it. That seems really interesting.
Here's
But
one
I
thing that
think
I would really like to see from that as well, though. We were to combine this with what we were talking about earlier about having visual cues to show you things. I think that the visual cues and the graphics that come off of like these webs, points, and all that good stuff should have some kind of visual cue, like different coloration or different animation to show that it is a mutagenic module.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, different color would be cool.
Yep.
Different color, or like the notification over your capacitor and your shield status. If you hover your mouse, it should tell you like an abyssal mod or something.
Well, but
Or
like even then though, it wouldn't tell you what the stat, right? Like
yeah, but you would know to
so,
be more careful about what you were dealing with, right?
yeah.
Potentially, in some cases, it could be too late. But I think the most impacted PvP scenario for this is in faction warfare. This is where it's going to be really dangerous to see how the meta changes. Like on a small scale nano PvP, you run the risk of pushing the guys who are already at the top even further. Uh, and there's going to be a necessary reaction from the people they fight. Once they realize they've got these mods, maybe they're going to be less inclined to fight them. They're more scared of them. It might be bad for content overall. But in general, when you're fighting, 5v20 or 10v30 plus, when you fuck up and you get killed. These mods won't. They'll make it much harder to fuck up, but you still can die, and you're putting, hopefully, it's a fair amount of value on the line.
Right.
But in a small gang versus a blob that has those tools, I think player skill still comes into it. Like there's already really strong fits out there. You can already run a high grade snaked 100 MN Legion that is just jacked. Like when you look at stats compared to other things, it is insane. But if some guy who has no idea how to fly it hops into it, he's going to lose that ship. So I'm not concerned about their balance as much. I mean, if say you're in a situation where some rapier is webbing you from 140k and you're in a very scary fight, you might have to sacrifice that ship now. Maybe that ship that's webbed is your crazy fast 100 MN Abyssal Legion.
Well,
Maybe it's just some guy and you can abandon him. Maybe you can get a reaction out of your gang, then push in, force counterplay, damp that rapier out, kill the rapier, do something. And
I mean, so there's a couple of other fits that people have thought up that have run the numbers, like 100 MN Orthruses that can point out to 90 kilometers. and stuff like that. And I think obviously that'll come down to what they end up deciding on numbers wise, like with CCP. But also like we're kind of hijacking the conversation from a small gang perspective because that's what we have the most experience with. I'm curious if like Lennox or Razor, do you guys have insight on like maybe a different scale, like maybe a larger group setting? What you think these kinds of modules are they going to be like something that FCs use? I mean, barring the monitor now, or like you're going to see these on Titans, or like what do you think maybe on a different scale?
Have we even thought about that yet on Titans? Has that been brought up before?
I think honestly they should just say no abyssal mods on capitals.
Yeah, geez.
We already know that capital items are not you're not able to mutate them, which is a very good thing. But I don't think it would.
Well, but you can still put battleship. So one of the things that carriers and dreads and I don't know if supers do it, but oftentimes you put a 500 MN micro warp on your capital in order for alignment purposes, right? But what if you could get a 500 MN to move you far faster, right?
But that's not the goal of the 500 MN. The scale difference between a 50,000 and a 500 is so huge. You're not going to be going at reasonable combat speed. And the ones that they have now, the fits are already geared around working as intended.
Yeah, the cap suitable mods will be the warp scram and the web for combat carriers and dreads.
Especially web on a vehement, like that's gonna be scary.
That's true.
Yeah,
those are very niche.
For nullsec doctrines, I would assume, based on the rarity, I doubt that this will ever be able to be incorporated into a real doctrine because of how many of these parts you would need. It's really going to come down to the drop rate, I think, and how frequently can you get items within this boosted range. But I would certainly assume that your doctrines will kind of remain the same. And then, hey, if you want to show up and bring better items, help yourself. Don't be shy.
Well, the monitor was also kind of mentioned there, but don't forget that you can use like dual prop on monitors, right? You can have the micro and the AAV. You might actually be able to get a better micro or a better AB and be able to keep up with a different kind of doctrine.
But I think that's well within the realm of reasonability. That's not broken. That's fine. And
oh yeah, it's not broken, but it could open some doors.
Yeah, but I think that's an interesting aspect to these modules is opening doors, making new fits possible. The terrifying nightmares of 90-kilometer 100 MN Orthreses and Super Legions going 8K a second frigate signature. Those are terrifying and those are worrisome. Hopefully they'll be very, very rare and or ludicrously expensive. But for
hopefully this will be a good ISK sync as well. I imagine all the folks down at JITA and the markets who are making these modules, I would expect that once this is released and people are actually getting the mutaplasmids, that module, the purchasing on the market should definitely go up, and people are just going to be sitting there gambling all day, just rolling stuff to see what they can find.
I guess a few weeks before Russian bots figure out how to run them.
That's another problem, though. Like this came up in the interview between Ashtarothi and CCP Rise, and Ashtarothi said specifically, do you think the contract market is built in such a way currently that it can prepare or can handle these kinds of things? Because like there's a large potential for like scamability and different things when you're trying to sell these because it's going to be contract only, is my understanding. For the modules themselves. And like CCP Rise kind of like he kind of gave a non-committal answer. He said something along the lines of, yeah, we're always thinking about improving the UI around contracts and that system, but currently no, there's no plans for that, and we'll see how it goes, something along those lines. And I think that's a real dangerous area.
From what I saw on the contracts on CC already, like when there's a contract made with a mutagenic mod, you can right click it and you can see the modified stats, right? If it's had a nerf stat, it's highlighted in red. If it's had a buff stat, it's highlighted in green. And I think it just falls on player responsibility. It's going to pain in the ass to search through all the contracts if you're looking for something specific. But it falls on the guy making the contract to name his contract appropriately, advertise it appropriately, whatever he's going to do. The price values are going to be all over the place because people aren't going to know what's worth what. Like some guy might see, oh, this micro warp drive had a max roll on an unstable speed bonus. but then not really recognize that, oh, well, capacitor use is actually probably debatably the most important stat of your MWD for some fits. And that got tanked. So he's going to pay, 2 billion isk, whatever he's going to pay for this super mod he thinks, and then it caps his cruiser out in 3 cycles.
Yeah, well, Solon said had a good point. Like when it's on a scale of 50, sure. Like, do you know how many contracts for Abyssal mods were on the test server?
I'm on the test server right now. See.
Okay, because like, what about when it's in the thousands? Like, how do you even start to sort? Like, do you sort by price, by name? Like, unless there's a system
I bet you
in the
there's gonna be.
contracts for sorting by stat, like CPU use or whatever, it's gonna be aids to try and even start looking. And that's the current contract system.
I would like to imagine that maybe not now, or maybe not too soon in the future, but at some point in the future, you think you're going to have to be able to have some of that read data that says, okay, this has this has that, and you might see a modification of the API or the ESI to kind of filter that kind of stuff out. I don't know.
Well, that's
I've heard a bunch of people talk about making
they asked,
apps,
and there was still nothing specific on that. Whether it's going to be, well, like eventually it will be in the ESI, but not at start, and they don't have a time frame.
I'm not personally concerned with how people are going to sell and trade these items. If you've got one that is good, I'm sure you're going to know somebody that at least in our circles, that you would know, oh, this mod might be good on this kind of ship. I know this guy likes to fly that kind of ship a lot. Maybe I'll convo him and ask him if he's interested in this thing. People are going to stockpile them or use them privately, sell them within their alliance. I'm excited to see that like kind of secondary market open up without just this max efficiency JITA trade. And
in our medium-sized fleets, I expect there to be, for specialty pilots like Lachesis' Hugin's, there will be an assigned value that it'll be expected you have an Abyssal mod of at least this bonus onto your Hugin, because why not have that extra bonus?
Yeah,
because Hugins are squishy.
But if it's reasonable, if they become as commonplace as some people worry they will be, it makes sense that a fleet commander would use them in those ways. But I don't know how they're going to be valued. Like, what is it going to? I know a lot of people care about their kill mails and ISK efficiency. What are these going to look like on Zkill? Is a max roll one gonna just be valueless, or is it going to come up as a 5 billion ISK mod and throw the efficiency right at them?
Squiz commented that he's not going to be able to know what to put down until that comes out.
Yeah.
So I think one of the questions that we don't have an answer to, and I think would also help kind of, is, in my mind, I'm envisioning if you apply a max mutoplasmid and you get a good roll on like a T2 item, it ends up somewhere around dead space, like as far as effectiveness. But I think this is actually one cool opportunity that would be good, is to make it somewhere around the idea of a faction effectiveness, but with a storyline fitting like a ish. Because right now I think storyline modules are actually in a weird place. You generally have like one per type of item. Like for cat boosters, it's like brave, and maybe it's the, for the micro warps, it's the analog boosters, right? And those are crazy expensive. And so there's this kind of like very niche role for those items. They have the best fitting, but they're maybe not as effective or what have you. And I think if you could kind of carve out that niche for, because one of the worries is maybe these mutoplasmids, you're just going to be able to roll a ton of them on T2 stuff, and it's going to replace any dead space stuff. And like that takes out an entire point or part of gameplay, I think, potentially.
I'm not gonna lie, that's 100% of what I plan on doing with these modules,
right?
And these alteration things, I can't remember what to call them, but I fly very cheap. I get made fun of a lot for flying a retribution only worth 70 mil. But if I can take T2 modules and then just apply a bunch of these things, then I could massively boost effectiveness for pretty much no cost potentially.
Potentially,
Yeah, I don't
maybe.
think
I think it'd be kind of cool.
that's you're gonna fall into the same trap of or you mine is free. These things that you farm are not free. That's your time
Oh, I'm not going
mining
to
them.
farm them.
Yeah, but you're gonna buy them, and if you're
Yeah.
gonna buy them, they're not gonna be free. They're not.
Yeah, and
They're
and
not gonna be cheap.
the argument still that I keep wanting to harken back to is, everyone keeps saying, oh, this is going to be OP, this is going to be too much, but it's going to be random what drops, so you may or may not get it, and if you purchase it on the market, that's one thing as well. But if you're going to go farm them, you might get it, you might not, and then you get this mutaplasmid, and you apply it to an item. It might be good, it might not be. So there's a lot of randomness involved in there. So
But so there's the law of averages, right? But there's also like, I'm gonna make up a saying, but like law of mass quantities, like by the idea of there being like 10,000 of these created, just based off of the probability that they're using in whatever they decide is a good probability distribution, there will be a certain number of perfect rolls. Like that is inevitable, and like that's what concerns me. Like you're saying that rarity could be, a beneficial, like that's what's going to limit this. And I think really when you extrapolate that out to 10,000 of these eventually on the market being created, you're going to end up with enough of the really really good ones that it's actually going to become a situation where very many people have them, and they are potentially very
I think that really,
widely used.
and it's a very logical fear to have, and that's rational to look at it from that perspective. But we need to see more concrete numbers. Like we have no idea what the percentage chance of rolling positive or negative on each one. How those are calculated on the modules themselves. We know the ranges they can fall in. We don't know how likely it is, how much they're skewed one way or the other, which would be very interesting to know. But with something that was mentioned earlier about these just straight up replacing Dead Space modules, uh, I think on certain modules there's definitely those fears, but on the one that I seem to be always end up talking to people the most about, micro warp drives, the key stat that I think a lot of people overlook on the micro warp drive is the signature radius penalty, or the sorry, not the signature radius, the capacitor pool penalty, right? How much it reduces your base capacitor, and that's not even a viable stat. That's not a modified stat on these mutagenic. So you can't change that. So in the end, you still will have, you might have a super fast MWD, but you're going to have to make sacrifices in terms of compensating for that missing capacitor,
That
maybe
part is
not
a
being
bit
able to
weird
run it
though.
forever.
Like, for example, with the warp disruptor, there's also the power grid stat. Like, I don't care if my power grid gets 100% debuff, cause
Yeah, because
you
it
know,
only took one to begin with.
yeah. So who cares? And also for the small shield extender, the signature radius penalty you get, like the maximum debuff gives you, I think, -2. Like, who cares about those numbers? They don't make any sense.
But I think you're overlooking some of the like highly optimized fits. On some fits, changing a warp disruptor from using one power grid to using three, four, five power
It's
grid.
never gonna get to 3 or 4, dude. It's gonna get maximum of like 2.
Yeah.
so let's get a consensus around the room real quick. Whether or not you're for or against this, like just not going to do too much detail. Do you like this
So
or you don't like it?
sorry, I will answer that in 1 second. But
Mm-hmm.
the power grid is not actually stat modified on the warp scramblers, right? It's all CPU based, and CPU is a huge limiting factor.
Okay.
The power grid is not modified. And small shield extenders, unfortunately, they're not used. Like, yeah, 2 sig reduction kind of feels meaningless, but when you actually look into sig tanking in a closer detail, 2 signature makes a big difference when you're pushing something as low as you can possibly go. And I think personally, I think they're a good thing. I think it'll be interesting. Um, I'm worried about balance, but I think they're overall going to be very interesting, potentially exciting. I'm excited to see the 9 billion ISK MWD on a Legion drop and so
we have greater issues of balance in like the capital gameplay that we have to worry about. I don't think having even a couple overpowered subcaps, even in small gangs, running rampant in wormholes, in low sec, in Roman gangs, is really going to disbalance the game. Like, you're still going to bump into a carrier, you're still going to bump into a bosun, you're still going to bump into a bigger fleet than you.
Into 500 MN Hicks.
That needs to be fixed. That is a much bigger issue, and mutagenic mods are irrelevant. That needs to be fixed at its core.
Well, I agree with that sentiment, mainly because the only people that use them are gate campers. If Hicks were actually used for killing supers, like, which they are, but if people
right?
yeah, if people didn't use them for gate camping, then I wouldn't have a problem with them. But that's a big part of gate camps.
To answer your question, Kale, I'm for them. I think that this is just another tool in a good Eve player's toolbox, and I think a newer player doesn't know what's happening when you're overheating, doesn't know what's happening when you're using a type or a faction mod opposed to a tech one, and I think that it'll be fine. We'll find a way to sell the mods in an efficient way.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I'd say I'm also for this change. I can't wait to farm them and sell them and make money on it. I think people making the mods themselves are going to make a lot of money. I think it is going to definitely throw balance out of whack for a bit, and they mentioned that at FanFest. And I think eventually they'll have to reel certain things in, but those won't show themselves until we really get to play with these things. So I would say in the meantime, it's very exciting that we're going to have the first chance because we're going to be able to kind of play with them while they're broken and totally overpowered. And finding that out is going to be a lot of fun too, is how to play with these efficiently.
Now, Meredith, I want to ask you, were you spying in on me when I was talking with Solon Decimus earlier about the overheating of the mods? You just mentioned something almost identical to what he said. He said some players don't know what happens when you overheat mods. I was one of those people. I had no idea that when you overheat mods, that some of the mods near them on the physical plane of existence are also taking damage. I didn't know this. I just learned this shit today.
From one of the devs at FanFest that when they released the overheating of modules, there was outcry from the player community that overheating would make the balance imbalanced and guns would become too strong or blah blah blah, all the Eve salt, you know.
So I will say I am optimistic, but I think that scaled iteration is probably the best course of action. And like CCP Rise talked a lot about that in the interview with Astrosity. Like, again, if you haven't listened to that, I really think it's good. But so I think that's something that they're mindful of. So I'm optimistic. I think it could be good, but it could be terrible, and we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I think the Abyssal sites are pretty awesome. It's also gonna give people like better understanding of the game mechanics and how to fly ships and maybe even better prepare for PvP. But the RNG aspect of the mods, like I kind of like I don't feel that having percentages on balancing things works. Like officer mods are balanced for a good reason because they have insane fitting requirements. You can't even fit them on a cruiser, or you need to gimp fittings in other areas to make them fit. And having percentages, like static percentages on all of them, I don't think you can actually properly balance that.
Well, Rise did talk about, so the mod will save the roll value. So if it's an 80% roll of a perfect roll, right? Then it saves that stat. And then if they make changes later on, say they change the MWD from 20% to 10%, then that mod will adjust itself to 80% of, or whatever its roll value was of that new max. So I probably didn't explain that great, but so the idea is it's very scalable down the line, and any changes they make in the future will carry over to the modules existing. They won't be any, no modules will be grandfathered in essentially.
Yeah, they will nerf this someday for sure.
It's still based on percentages though. Like for example, the officer web has like what is it, 1200 power grid. Like you can't fit that on a cruiser, really. And how much percentage are you gonna apply to it to make it like that?
I don't do math.
It's
I've got to say, strictly from the point of view of a guy who makes YouTube videos trying to teach dudes how to PvP who might not know how or might not know everything and want to learn more. These modules are just going to create some shitty circumstances where it's like, yeah, I could have used this really awesome clip, but then I'd have to explain this module and how I don't actually know its value and how um, it might have screwed me over because of how strong it was due to being the mutagen module. It just makes things a lot more complicated, both for me to make the videos and for people
Also
to
teach
get
people.
into PvP, because you now have this. You can't memorize web ranges now, even if you factor in faction web ranges, because it simply doesn't even matter anymore. You could be webbed from any range.
All right, so from bottom to top, starting with me, of course. I like it. I can't wait to see what it comes. Blood, you seem kind of for it.
I am tentatively for it.
Tentatively, and Beatron.
I would say tentatively, I'd like to see some numbers rolled back a bit, but I'm more or less excited about this shakeup this is going to do and make it a little interesting and meaningful.
And all right, yeah, we all know Cyclo vehemently hates it, so we're gonna skip him, right? Just kidding. You like it or love it, or leave it.
It's the greatest worst addition ever.
It's the best never.
It's perfect for evil Cyclo, and it's terrible for good Cyclo.
All right, Linek.
Yeah, I'm for it, but I definitely think it will be probably partially broken in some way, definitely exploitable, but overall, it's going to spice things up, so I think it's good overall.
All right, Meridud, you seem to like it.
I'm for it. I mean, I think CCP is putting a lot of levers and dials, and if the balance team is serious, I think they will balance and keep these things in check.
And Razor.
I don't really like the RNG aspect of it, but it also has positive points. It can be fun if properly done. I kind of hope that CCP takes a little bit more time to properly work it out. It kind of feels rushed to me right now.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's properly balanced and fix some UI stuff, maybe too, it could be a thing.
All right, so I've persuaded everyone to be on Team Mutagen.
Well,
for reference, I was just crunching some numbers real quick. A Dark Blood Stasis Webifier, which is currently the longest range faction Stasis Webifier, with a max roll on an unstable mutagen and overheat will get you 23.5 for links, and a Toby's Web gets you 25 heated for links.
Imagine that on a Balgorn.
Yeah, scary.
I've got to say though,
very scary.
I've got to say that Rise has been really busting ass doing balancing on this, and
he's been putting
really
a lot
happy
of
about
tweets
that.
out.
And the fact that we're actually getting a rebalance before it hits TQ is absolutely amazing. I wish they put this much effort into all of the balance in Eve.
I agree.
Well, they're giving feedback, which I think maybe another part of this outrage is a lot about transparency, right? We don't know numbers and we don't know what's going on in their heads, and so seeing communication from Rise is good. I think I don't know what their plan is, but a while back that with T3Ds they did a focus group, and I think that was extremely successful. It just took them forever to implement it.
1 year.
Yeah, I talked to two people on that focus group, Fintru and Sutonia, and they both said after like a month they had pretty much come to conclusions, and then it took a year for CCP to implement it. But I think that's good, and yeah, CCP Rise has been tweeting out like changes that he's kind of to feel out what people's reactions are, and I think that's good. Oh, are we talking about the ships? Like, not to drag on the podcast, but are we talking about the ships or just the mutagens?
Oh, the ships are dank. No discussion required there.
Cool. All right.
I think that's
Good
a
chat.
whole episode.
Right.
But yeah, actually, I was thinking, Murdud, if you're good with that, I think we should start slowly moonwalking back out of the door. We've kind of wrapped up that quite a bit.
Yeah, I ran 3. I'm on my 3rd abyssal site of this podcast here.
You're an animal. See, you're doing all the gameplay, and I'm doing the social thing. I'm like a social butterfly over here. But yeah, gents, I was thinking about wrapping it up. We kind of got a good idea of what we like about the Abyssal Dead Space, what we like about the mutagens and all that, and what we hope gets changed. There's a lot to be foreseen. We don't know the whole ins and outs, so we will find this out. But other than that, do we want to do shoutouts first, or do we want to talk about some meetups that are coming up?
Let's get the meat up.
Let's meet it up. Yeah, so if you turn your browsers over onto the Eve-Meet, or evemeet.net, we have a few meets coming up. Looks like... Go ahead.
Cincinnati on May 12th. We also got Melbourne on May 12th. It's in South Wharf, Victoria, Australia. We got the Eve Atlanta, May 19th at the Dark Horse Tavern. And the first annual Eve Retreat in Lesterville, Missouri. It's May 31st to June 3rd. That's put on by space on her name. Cascora. It's put on by Cascora. It's $60. You have to sign up in advance for that one. Just don't show up to the random camp and be a stranger. So those meetups are all one-offs, and then check out the monthly meetups. You can find me at the monthly Vancouver meetup. Not next month. Still got some prenatal classes. But the Toronto meetup is out there on a monthly basis. Des Moines, Iowa is the 4th Friday of every month. And the Houston meetup. Next one was yesterday? No, Sunday. So,
I actually a little bit thought about going to that one in Missouri because, number one, that's going to fall right in line with my birthday. I'm not going to dox myself and say which one of those days, but it's one of those days. But I am actually, I was born in the state of Missouri. So I thought, yeah, that might be good. So I might have to talk to the wifey and see about going over to that. I'm probably going to have my credit stolen within the next 2 hours, so I should probably not mention any more personal information.
Sorry, one more time on the credit card number.
732. Just kidding. None of those numbers are mine.
All right, now let's hit some shoutouts.
Yeah, bottom to the top.
Fine with me. I'd like to give a little shout out to my corp members, actually, of Stranger Danger, for actually putting up with me and letting me warp shield kite fleets to 0 and dying horribly.
Great. Must be a low sec entity because wormholes don't exist. Lennox?
Shout out to the Black Crow Bandits, Slice Alliance, and Guardians of the Galaxy. Let's keep it up, boys. And also, you know what? Shout out to Asher and the goons who are bringing the content. They're spending their isk to come up to us and bring us fights, and it's a good time all around.
Good fights aren't cheap. Yeah. Cyclo?
Well, I'll keep it short. Make sure that you follow or subscribe to the Mind Clash Podcast YouTube channel, of course, on YouTube. It's a great place to catch up on the Mind Clash Podcast if you miss out on it during the week. Also, make sure you hit up the Mind Clash Podcast Discord, which I will put in the Twitch chat. It's a great place to keep up with everybody during the week and figure out where the show is going to be going. And if you're watching this on YouTube or on the website the podcast is hosted on. We do this live every Monday at somewhere between 0200 and 0300 usually.
7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Don't know what that makes in Europe time.
It's sometime. It's always the same time here, but it's always an hour different, winter or summer.
Daylight savings.
Uh.
Thank you, Cyclo. Quality. Britain.
Beatron.
There you go.
Britain.
That's actually what I first thought when I looked at it.
New one. But shout out to my Corp Integritas and the 4 other guys in it with me. Awesome as always. Shout out to Fellowship of the Ring, all the guys from Fight the Blob and Rokapel as well.
Thank you, Key $. Ha. Blood Rune.
I'm gonna give a shout out to Beatron for being the best Proteus feeder I've ever known.
There's only like 3, man.
Actually, no. So real shout out is Finteru and Zach, my 2 mentors in Eve. They both probably have taught me the most about this game and making videos and stuff. So always shout out to those dudes. And hope to see Zach again someday. And Finn was streaming not too long ago, and I enjoyed hanging out with him. So good times.
When isn't Finn streaming? That's kind of his gig, ain't it?
He hasn't been streaming Eve as much since he started working for Twitch, but he's been back around a little bit more recently. So.
Fun fact about that, when I was living in Germany, Finn would always kind of stream at the time for him, but it would be kind of later the night for me when I was trying to get the babies to sleep, or I'd wake up and have to do a midnight feeding, and there was Finn, and I'd just sit there and watch him while I was feeding him.
Yeah, I think like the best part is like I was hanging out listening to music and in the background, and he's a very good PvPer, but it's good times, just a very open environment, and he focuses on that radio show aspect, and it's really I always enjoyed that. And then after stream, I sent him a message on Twitch. I was like, hey, do you have any good I was looking for copyright free stuff that you could play in the background of a stream, that's not gonna mute your VOD, or that you could put in like YouTube videos and it's gonna be more usable, right? More friendly. And he just linked me a Spotify playlist of like hundreds of songs. And he was just like, yeah, no, these are like specific artists that are content maker friendly. They've become like very popular on Twitch because they make music specifically royalty free so that content creators can use them and stuff. Is really cool. So
nice. All right, I guess to shout it out for myself, I do want to remind everybody that I started this little petition last week. If you've been listening to our show for a while, it's been on for about 2 years, and we have yet to be accepted by CCP as an official fan site. I don't know how that's come to be, but I've actually submitted it about 5 different times, and we have yet to be submitted, so I've created a petition, which I will link here. There's the link. Yes, please. I know they ask for personal information. Yes, guys, I get it. I don't see any of that. I don't know any of that information. Sign the shit. Don't be weirdos.
I'm going to shout out my FCs in Iron Armada. Thanks for spinning up fleets and taking us out. Even if we don't get any kills and get caught through stupid wormholes and have to probe our way out for an hour and a half after.
Stupid wormholes.
Fleets are done.
Imaginary space.
Best space.
God damn it. Fucking wormholes.
All right, so I guess that wraps it up for us. So on behalf of myself and Merdud, and we also have Blood Ruin Beatron, or K $, Cyclo Lanic, and Razor. Appreciate you coming to visit us tonight, and we can't wait to talk again next week. Bye-bye.
Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for having us.
I'm doing it. I'm doing the credits.
Does it mute the sound?
No, of course not. I have to do that manually, and we all know I'm horrible at that. Ooh, I think that's too fast. That's way too fast. Is that too fast?
It doesn't show up for a while.
I'm actually a feeder of Sleipnirs.
AC Sleipnirs.
Yeah, man.
I'm apparently a feeder of Retributions nowadays.
I think that was way too fast. I'll fix
That's
that.
all right.
I'll fix that next time. All right, cool. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, are we muted currently?